Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. It is another hot day in the attic of dreams, but we have a full show for you with lots of projects and some things from funding websites and of course the mystery box competition. So let's get started. First this week we're looking at a project on the Electromaker site from Salman Faris VP. This is MQTT on the Wio terminal. Now, if you're not familiar with any of those things, that's fine. MQTT is essentially a protocol for sending messages for IoT devices. It's bidirectional, and rather than sending individual messages to devices, it works on a sort of subscribing and publishing idiom. But instead of listening to me explain it, go to this tutorial and see how to set it up on the Wio terminal. Now this is a fairly basic example of how to get an MQTT broker to work with the Wio terminal. It's using the Arduino IDE, which of course makes things a little bit easier, and the Wio terminal has an SAMD chip from Seed Studios in it, which is supported as one of the boards in the Arduino IDE. Now, one of the good things about this project is that it's a very base level project for getting used to working with MQTT with the Arduino IDE. Admittedly, this isn't an Arduino, this is the Wio terminal, which is a very cool little thing, and I'll come on to that in a second. But it introduces a few important concepts. As I said before, publishing and subscribing to things using an MQTT broker, and in this case they're using the public Hive HQ broker, which is a great thing for learning. It's not secure in any way, you shouldn't really use it for your own personal projects, but for learning this is a great way of working out how MQTT works in the cloud. Of course, you can host your own MQTT broker at home on a Raspberry Pi, any single board computer, anything really. Now, despite being someone who's been quite into the Internet of Things and all that kind of stuff for a while, I'd never really got too deep into MQTT. I've used it in terms of very off-the-shelf code that other people have written and I've plugged things into, and I've talked on the show a bit in the past how that can be a double-edged sword. It's so many things out there that you can get a project up and running quite easily, but you don't necessarily put the time into understanding it. Luckily, that's not a problem because Robin Mitchell, who writes for Electromaker and writes incredibly detailed articles and incredibly detailed tutorials with an incredible depth of knowledge, has written a custom IoT MQTT framework set of articles. Now these go from just a basic intro to the Internet of Things, talking about whether you're going to use ESP32 or ESP8266 based boards, HTTP versus MQTT, and how to create systems using both of them. I will link specifically the custom IoT MQTT framework article in the description of this video, but every single one of these are fantastic. I've had a quick look through all of them and I'm really looking forward to having the time to sit down and giving them a proper read. And yes, in case you haven't noticed, me being too hot and not having enough time to do things are becoming themes on this show, and I'm very aware of that. So the MQTT framework is just one part of this project on Electromaker that I've showed you. The other side of it is of course the Wio terminal. Now it has a bunch of fantastic features. It has Grove connectors for working with Seed Studio sensors, and it has also a few onboard buttons along with a good screen. But rather than me try and tell you about it, having had no hands-on experience with it, I'll direct you to go and look at the video from Not Enough Tech on the subject. He has a Wio terminal and goes through in great detail what it is, how it works, and gives some code examples. And Not Enough Tech has been a great supporter of the Electromaker Show since day one. So there'll be a link to that video along with the other two articles I mentioned in the description of this video. Futurama is one of my favourite shows ever, and Professor Farnworth's death clock is something that I've always thought was a fantastic idea. For those of you that may not be familiar, quite simply it's a little clock and you press a button and it will tell you the exact time of your death. Electromaker user Disaster of Puppets has made the death clock IRL and has shared the code and the description of how he has made it. So here is the death clock in action. It gives you the date of your death and the day, along with a reason that you died. Planet-wide extinction event. Sounds plausible. For those of you interested in making it, the schematics and circuit diagrams, along with the CAD enclosures and custom parts, along with all of the code, is available for download on the Electromaker website. And Disaster of Puppets also has a YouTube channel, although I should warn you that some of this stuff isn't exactly safe for work or children. Up next is a project called Colors of the Piano by Josh Mao, also known as Lapras96 on YouTube. Now this uses Arduino and processing in order to detect the pitch and the volume and various other attributes of an acoustic piano and in real time give you feedback using an LED strip. Now by this stage I don't think I need to tell you that this ticks so many boxes for me as someone who plays the piano and is obsessed with Arduino and has used processing for various tasks like this in the past. I'm going to play the video, but I just want to give a quick epilepsy warning. Anyone that has trouble with flashing lights might want to stop watching now. I've paused the video now, so anyone that was looking away can look back. This project doesn't have much in the way of documentation. From the YouTube description, it looks like 23 Summer 2020 final project. I don't know if Des Inv is an academic thing or whether it's some kind of a hack fest or a maker competition. I do not know. But what I can say is that as someone who has used processing with Arduino before, and there is also processing's sister library, which is called P5.js. Processing is Java, P5.js is JavaScript. They're both very robust libraries, which are very good for working with Arduino and adding visuals to your projects very easily. And processing especially is very good for anything real-time because it's very fast. They're both quite easy to get into, they're both fantastically documented, and of course the wonderful Daniel Schiffman, who is the leader of the Coding Train channel. The leader is probably not the right word, he is the Coding Train channel, has a fantastic resource on that, including several which are how to use Arduino with processing. But yeah, this is just a lovely project that stands right between maker, culture, code, art. Love it. Staying with music, Sarah Mitchell is a YouTuber who creates wonderful things and documents them on her channel. I've been coming to this channel for a while, and there's a great variation of exactly the kind of thing I love to see, which is completely homemade musical instruments based on breadboards and simple circuit boards, and building synthesizers from the ground up, a lot of the time using things like microcontrollers. Her latest video, an open-faced 8-step sequencer, fits with this very well. It uses two pieces of that kind of breadboard, perf board crossover that are stacked on top of each other, along with a bunch of potentiometers in order to control the pitch of each note in the sequence, and of course a potentiometer for speed and a knob for what seems like two different volume controls. Now, I don't know a huge amount about this project other than what I can see, which is there are several chips here and of course the potentiometers for the notes, that it runs on 9 volts, you can see the 9-volt battery in the top of the picture there, and that there is a jack output. But it doesn't really matter that I don't know what's happening, because the entire reason this video was put up is Sarah was asking if something like this was on eBay or reverb.com, would you buy it? And my answer is absolutely I would, especially if it was in kit form and I could build it myself and get lots of that valuable soldering practice in doing so. There are a lot of soldering kits out there which do a various amount of things, and some of them are incredibly cheap, but most of them are things that I build and I look at and think are very nice, and then I never really use again. This is something I could see myself getting a lot of fun out of. Up next, a project from the Arduino subreddit, and yes, this is another Arduino-based watch. We've seen these before, but this one's very nicely designed. As you can see, it's not that chunky. It has 5 buttons and 6 if you include the power button at the top, and various different ways that it can be used. I mean, obviously it can be a watch, and it can also be a stopwatch, but as you're about to see, it has a few extra features. So yeah, the addition of an RGB LED, that's kind of cool. Who wouldn't want an RGB LED on the watch? And having a little flashlight on your watch is kind of practical. Yeah, okay, this is cool. I think this is a pretty cool idea. Yeah, look, another LED. Maybe it's really dark. Maybe you need a lot of light. I can see that. No, that's a cool project. No, I like it. It's good. Very good. Very nice. Yeah. Hold on. Hey, wait. Hold. Laser beams. Laser beams. Is this another one of those throw money at the camera situations and hope that it turns up at my door? Yeah, that's fantastic. No, this is a fantastic project. It really is. As I've said many times before, it's nice to come up with an idea, but it's very rare that something just comes together and fits so well. Like, even the way the cables are routed through this device is obviously very well thought out. I don't have a link to anything further than just this Reddit thread, which of course I will link in the description of the video. And if anyone does find out any more information on this, any kind of build or project that's been posted somewhere, please do let me know. I'd be very interested in seeing it. Up next, another thing I spotted on Reddit, on the next fracking level subreddit. So say we all. So this is a 3D printed Spider-Man Homecoming mask, but it's a very, very cool one because as you can see, the eyes are moving, and I'm not 100% certain how the eyes are moving. And I looked through this thread, couldn't find any more details about it, and went on a wild rabbit hole into the internet to try and find out where this mask is from and who made it. Now, I did not find that mask specifically, but I did find this one from Kevin Creations, who's actually made a whole load of different similar creations to this on his YouTube channel. As you can see, it's very similar to the other one, but with the addition of an actual fabric mask glued over the top of the plastic shell. The video goes on to show how an Arduino Nano, along with several servos and a buck converter for using a 3.7 volt LiPo battery, were used in order to make the project. Now this is a part tutorial in a way because it is showing you exactly how to do it. It doesn't show you the code, although the servo code is something that you could probably work out for yourself. However, this is a project that you can actually get to order from Kevin Creations, or Kevin Creations. I don't know if I'm saying either one of those right. However, unfortunately, the gapless mechanical lenses and face shell with RPC Studio mask that Kevin Creation is selling for $490 is out of stock at the minute anyway. That said, this is pretty much an entire build video, and there's no reason that you couldn't build something like this for yourself. In fact, working out how to do it for yourself would probably be a pretty big but pretty good project, and I know some of us have a little bit more time on our hands than usual at the minute. Either way, this definitely fits one of those projects that is so interesting that I would watch this for entertainment even if I had no intention of building it for myself, and I will be linking this video along with the Reddit thread that I spotted initially in the description of this video. Just quickly returning to Great Scott, I did feature part 1 of this Automating a Greenhouse with Laura series that he's doing a while back, and I just want to say part 2 is out and he's adding a motorized window opener, and as always it is an incredibly high quality project and explainer from Great Scott, one of my favorite YouTube channels, and yes, I would advise going to look at both of these videos and many more. You will learn a lot here. And for our final project this week, this is a cardboard version of those tensegrity sculptures that you may have seen. I've seen these things made out of wood, made out of steel. Never thought of trying to make one myself out of cardboard, and as you can see, it is absolutely possible. These things are mind-bending, and they're one of those wonderful quirks of engineering, which you look at it and think it should be impossible, and the reasons that it work are actually quite simple, though I'm still not going to try and explain them and make myself look like an idiot on YouTube now, am I? So the video was on the Things Made of Cardboard YouTube channel, and yes, it's a very beautifully presented channel where they make things out of cardboard, as the title suggests. There'll be a link to it in the description of this video. Go and give them a subscription. Okay, it is now time for the mystery box competition. Now, as I have said many times on this show, this is a mystery box full of things to do with single board computers, microcontrollers, sensors, all of that lovely stuff, and you can win something in it by leaving a comment on any of the Electromaker Show videos. Now, as I've said before, this is a bit of a mixed bag. Some of the stuff in here might not be necessarily immediately useful to you. Some of it might be shields for microcontrollers you don't own. Some of them might be quite out-of-date tech that's just interesting, but that's the whole point of it being a mystery box. So I'm going to have a quick rummage and let's find a prize. So I think we've had a couple of big boxes, so let's get something small this week. Let's get this. This is a Broadcom Wicked Sense Bluetooth Smart Sensor Tag. Oh, cool! Okay, this is a little tag which runs on batteries and has a bunch of sensors in it. Now, as you can see, it is relatively small, and yeah, there's the watch battery holder. I hope you can see that. And this has a bunch of stuff in it. It has a G sensor, a gyroscope, a E compass, a barometer, and a humidity and temperature sensor, and works using one of the Bluetooth chips from Broadcom, the BCM 20737S. I'll have to look that up. So yes, having looked this up, this thing is super cool. This is essentially wireless sensors, is what it is. It works using Bluetooth. There is an app that you can download to just make it work straight out of the box. But of course, if you're into working with Bluetooth, there are libraries for using Bluetooth with Arduino, with Raspberry Pi, and of course with smartphones. And this gives you a handy little battery-powered thing with sensors in it to develop with. This is actually a really cool little thing. And I always wondered if something like this existed. And of course, I'm holding it in my hand. So we now have a prize. Let's find a winner. And the winner of the mystery box competition this week and this little Broadcom dongle sensor thingy is Jeff Wharton. Thank you so much for your very honest support of the show, and we'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this out to you. As mentioned, if you want to enter the mystery box competition, just leave a comment on the video. But for now, let's get on with the show. And now on to a section we like to call Funding Website Things. I guess that one's stuck. On Kickstarter, this is a Raspberry Pi based RTD measurement device which can support apparently up to 64 channels, which is quite a lot. Now RTD stands for resistance temperature detector, and it's used in industry as a very accurate way of determining temperature. Now, rather than go through all of the details here, needless to say, this is something that has to be very, very well calibrated in order to work properly. When you're working with resistance, it gets very messy very quickly because we're used to using resistors and everything in our starter kits. But if you're someone like me that doesn't come from an electronics background, when you start realizing that everything pretty much has a voltage drop over it, everything has some form of a resistance, you start to get how hard it must be to actually create something which is designed to sense something like temperature without the thing itself throwing the temperature sensing off, if that makes any sense at all. So in short, the Kickstarter does actually give a very good job of explaining how this all works, but I'm just going to move straight down to what it looks like. And as you can see, this is a hat that sits on top of the Raspberry Pi. It has a whole plethora of entry points for different temperature sensors, and the hat itself is based on an STM32 board with a very, very high precision analog to digital converter. Now it's still in the prototyping stage, but as they're showing here, they are also stackable, and that's where it says up to 64 channels. Now I don't know enough about it to be sure about this, but I would imagine if you get up and up and up in the channels, the speed at which you can read these things will probably go down somewhat. But realistically, who out of us is going to need 64 channels of temperature measuring at once? I just think this is a very, very nicely thought out project that scales, and scalability is important. This thing here is really nice, this onboard hardware watchdog. A while ago I was looking into how to use an Arduino to basically do this. There's a fantastic video by Ralph S. Bacon out there, which is how to use an Arduino to keep your Raspberry Pi booted pretty much forever. And the way it works is if the Raspberry Pi locks up or stops working, a countdown begins, and if nothing happens within by the time that countdown ends, it will automatically reboot the Pi. And of course, Pis that are being used for very specific tasks usually start that task on boot. So what you have is a Pi that if it locks up or anything goes wrong with it, it will automatically repower. It looks like they have actually built this into the board. So here's a good example of what I was talking about before with scalability. It's very unlikely we're going to need 64 temperature sensors, but here's an example of them using 8, which is all very practical things. Office, living room, garage, fridge, boiling water, because you need to make sure your water is boiling. No, obviously that's useful. And using Node Red, which is something that I would love to get into more details with you at some point. I've been using Node Red for a while, and there's some really cool stuff you can do with it. But yes, this is a Kickstarter that has already reached its goal. It has 9 days to go, but I thought I would mention it because this is the kind of thing that I know some people are very interested in, and to get one of the basic hats, the RTD4, a 4-channel RTD, is only $30. And if you spend a little bit more, albeit $70, you can get the same 4-channel RTD with the sensors that you can plug into them, which have up to 0.01 Celsius precision, which is a lot of precision. While this is likely out of scope for many of us, I don't really have a need for something like this. I did want to point it out because projects like this are worth our support. This has obviously been well thought out, it's been cleverly iterated over, and when you put it next to the industrial devices that do this, it is so much cheaper, which is almost always the way. On to another handheld 8-bit gaming device for Steam learning and things like that. And yes, I know I covered one of these in last week's show, and this is similar in some ways and different in others. This one's based on the Arduino Micro, and as you can see, again, this is a Kickstarter that has already reached its goal. So I wanted to mention it because I'm on a bit of a tip at the minute for 8-bit handheld devices. As I mentioned last week, I've already supported the Open Game Station, which is similar to this in many ways, but also different. I like the way that that works. It's modular with stacked cards and all that kind of stuff, whereas this one is slightly different. Yes, it is still Arduino based. In fact, it is based on the same chip. There are a lot of similarities here. However, there are also a few functional differences. One thing that is a big departure from the Open Game Station is this one has a memory chip. And also the form factor is kind of slightly smaller as well. Not that that's necessarily a problem because they're both very, very small. And the similarities don't just end in the fact it's an 8-bit small handheld gaming system. It's quite similarly priced as well. £49 or €55 is what's noted here for getting the 8-bit XL educational kit. But there is also an £80 tier, which is quite interesting because they don't just give you the 8-bit Cade XL, they give you all of the tools you need in order to build it. that includes everything, the soldering iron, solder socket, everything. It's kind of cool, and I don't know of anyone else that's done this. Like, sure, there's a lot of kits out there that just give you this, what you can see on the screen, everything you need to put it together. And it's clear that there's going to be instructions along with a hardware test script. Oh, that's already here, it looks like. A hardware test script that you can download. And I also noticed on this page that the 8-bit-cade is quoted here, something I didn't hear about at the time, but it makes sense that it exists given that the 8-bit-cade XL is being kickstarted right now. And again, very similar sort of thing. Visual parts guide, very well put together, very good for people who are maybe making this kind of project for the first time. I've got a lot of time for this Kickstarter, and as I mentioned, I've already supported the Open Game Station. It's unlikely that I'll want to support more than one, but there's options out there for people that want to make their own little handheld 8-bit gaming stations, and this is a very well thought out project. And if you are looking into it, I would consider very carefully looking at this, along with the Open Game Station, and making up your mind as to what fits you personally best. As I said before though, it sounds like such a small thing, but the modularity of the Open Game Station and the fact that it's got that sort of like shaped game controller handle thing just speaks to me. And it's a very small detail and it's a very personal thing, which is what I love about these projects. There are so many of them that do so many similar things that it really does come down to personal preference. And I like that. I think that's a good thing in our community. Finally, moving on to the Waynlux K6. Now this is a very tiny little laser engraver. Now I've been kind of obsessed with laser engravers for a while. I've wanted to build a DIY one. I thought about getting a really big one. I've settled on supporting this Kickstarter. I'm a backer of this Kickstarter yeah, as you can see, I mean, they wanted 8 grand and they've made nearly €1 million. So I don't think they're going to be too helped or hurt by me mentioning it in any way, shape or form. For me, it was very simple. I've wanted something like this for a while. I wanted something that my partner could use as well, and this has Android and iOS support built in, and can engrave various things and also cut cardboard. And I mean, as we've probably seen, or you have probably seen from YouTube videos, not all of these laser engravers can really cut cardboard all that well. I'm not really that bothered. I'm getting it for the engraving side of things. But I wanted to mention it to you because it is small and pretty compact, and as someone that has been looking into getting a laser engraver for a while, this is what I've settled on. Hopefully it'll be what I want it to be, and if you are also interested in backing the project and getting it at a reduced price, by the time you see this video there'll probably be a day or so left on the Kickstarter. Of course, I'm sure they'll be selling it for a relatively reasonable price after the Kickstarter has ended as well. And finally this week we're looking at Inkplate 6 on Crowd Supply. Once again, this is something that has already been funded, and the only reason that I found this is because I've been looking at e-ink displays all week. I'm trying to build an e-ink display for our kitchen, just to put some regular information on, like what the weather's like outside, the temperature, which is also what the weather's like outside. They're the same thing, aren't they? And just standard things like what days all the different bins get collected in our part of Berlin, so we can make sure to take stuff downstairs from the flat and put it in the thing. It's just a nice thing to have, and e-ink displays are very, very low power. They are, however, quite expensive. I've been looking at ones from Waveshare and a few other ones from AliExpress, and to get any decent sized e-ink display is not all that cheap. You can find them, I think the cheapest one I found that would be usable for me was about €60 once you factor everything in. Now this is $99 to pre-order, and you still can pre-order it, and it seems like it's been very well thought out. It works on the ESP32, therefore is Wi-Fi straight out of the box, and it has a few capacitive touch buttons on it, and is mountable as well into a case. I mean, my plan would be to build either, well, probably a wooden case for it because it's going to be in the house and it has to look nice. I didn't even notice this the first time I looked through this. These are recycled Kindle screens. That's really cool. I really like the idea of reusing electronic things that aren't being used anymore, and Kindle screens are really good and stay really good for a long time. That's really cool. That's a really nice touch. Anyway, there will be a link to Inkplate 6 in the description of this video, and of course there'll be links to everything we've talked about in the show this week. So that is it for this week's show. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying the show, and if you are, consider giving us a thumbs up or a subscription. And of course, any comment that you put on the video will enter you for the mystery box competition. But if you are working on a project or you're working in the industry, let us know what you're doing in the comment section. We are very interested in knowing what you do, and also if there's anything you'd like to see on the show. But for now, I hope you have a fantastic week. Stay creative, stay healthy, and I'll see you then.